Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Father Son Packers podcast, your brand new source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I am here, as always, with my dad, Matt. Dad, how are you doing?
Doing well. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
And as Tommy said, together with me, we are actually at the same place. Tommy's mom and I drove down to SoCal to have a Thanksgiving dinner here.
Yeah, and it's been very nice. Happy Thanksgiving to all you listeners. And as you may notice, we are doing our pregame for this Sunday night football matchup against the NFC-leading Philadelphia Eagles. We're doing it a day later than usual. Apologies. But we did have to take some time off to celebrate Thanksgiving and all of the busy things that come with that, cooking, cleaning, etc., etc. But we are bringing you this pregame for this matchup on Sunday right now. Packers are taking on the 9-1 Eagles, Dad. How are you feeling about that?
Oof, they look like the best team in the league so far, and most of the season anyway. Hurts has taken a huge step forward. The team's got good defense and offense, and it's in Philadelphia, and we have to win them all. Probably.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely, as a lot of Packers players have said this week, it's do or die time for the Packers. And honestly, it's been do or die time for a few weeks now, but now it's really do or die time.
This time for sure. We really mean do or die this time.
Now we really need to win the game. But anyway, before we get into our breakdown of the game, our usual pregame, let's go over a few news and notes for the Packers, starting with the fact that the Packers have cut running back Patrick Taylor and claimed edge/linebacker Justin Hollins, who was cut by the Rams. Hollins was a really athletic prospect out of Oregon in 2019 with really good explosive and speed grades. Has 1 sack and 1 forced fumble and 6 total pressures this year. Run grades on PFF have been better than his pass rushing each year, and a little bit down year this year compared to his last two, and he's about average, I would say. And then they did re-sign Patrick Taylor to the practice squad and cut one of their tight ends. Dad, any thoughts on adding Hollins, getting rid of Taylor, or moving Taylor down to the practice squad? That is.
Yeah, I was wondering when they first cut him whether they were thought that Goodson might be ready to go and hold the third running back duty, but since were able to bring Taylor back to the practice squad, I guess they'll elevate him as needed. They've been wanting to add veteran edge help, and this is probably the best guy who's been available for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and that was even before Gary went down. Frankly, they needed to add edge help, and so now we'll see how many snaps he plays his first week, but he'll probably. I wonder how soon he'll jump ahead of Garvin, for example, on the depth chart.
They've been activating Hamilton off the practice squad for these games, so they've been needing a fourth guy.
His grades, I was looking this year, are no bueno.
Yeah,
for Hamilton, Garvin's actually been improving, I would say, these last few games. He's been playing better than he has in other parts of his career, but they still need an improvement at the fourth edge spot.
Yeah, I definitely. And just having a guy with some more athleticism there, I think, is going to be great. I'm sure they're happy with what they've gotten out of Eningbari so far, and pretty pleased with what they've gotten out of Garvin this year compared to the last few, but they definitely need some more help at those positions. Beyond that, other Packers news, literally as of about 15 minutes before we started recording, Sean Rhyan, the Packers' third-round rookie guard, was suspended 6 weeks for violating the league's performance-enhancing drug policy. And the Packers' third-round curse continues, Dad.
Yep. Every prospect is out there. It's like, when it comes to the third round, so the Packers pick come up. Please don't pick me. Please don't pick me. Please don't pick me.
I would trade down for no value. I would trade from a third to the fourth and not even get anything back. And I think the Packers would be better off.
Their success, even at the same positions, a round or two later than the third, is kind of astonishing.
I'm sure if they had drafted Zach Tom in the third and Sean Rhyan in the fourth, though, that Ryan would be better.
Their career trajectories would be reversed.
It actually is almost a statistical. It's a statistical anomaly at this point how poorly the third rounders have been when compared to the rest of the draft classes.
Yeah.
You look back the past 5 years. Josiah DeGuara is easily their best third round pick of the last 5 years. Yep. Is Oren Burks the second best?
I guess you have to say yes.
Right? Oren Burks is the second best, and then even if you go back further, I'd say past 10 years, Ty Montgomery's the best. And maybe Fackrell. Maybe Fackrell. Yeah,
Fackrell,
maybe Kyler Fackrell.
If you go back 10 years, then I think Fackrell might be the best.
And if you go back like 14 years, you can get down to like Mike Daniels, and that's a great third round pick.
He's easily the best.
I mean, he's one of the better comp picks ever.
So in like the last 20 years, they've had one quality starter from the third round.
I can't say about years 15 to 20 off the top of my head.
Okay,
who those guys
last
were.
15 years.
Last 15, I would say they had one really good starter. I would say Ty Montgomery was a quality starter. It was decent at running back. He had some pretty good games for the Packers. Kyler Fackrell had that one really good year, and otherwise was a very solid third rusher, like a third rotation guy. And then, I mean, DeGuara's been okay. I don't know. Like
we'll see.
They've been missing a lot on these third rounders. They might as well burn these picks.
Yes,
they might as well trade these picks. I mean, it really is something. But anyway,
it is. And of course, this just gets beaten to death by everybody because it's such low hanging fruit to talk about. Instead of anybody in the front office now, if somebody suggests trading 2 picks to move up into the third, there should be somebody with clutch like, no, that's not something we should ever do again.
Yes, I mean they traded. I mean we were going back. It's like Oren Burks not on the team anymore.
Traded up to get him in the third.
Yep, and then Jay Sternberger not on the team after a year and a half.
His rookie contract.
Didn't make it through like 2 years on his rookie contract or something like that. Josiah DeGuara, solid player, decent player. Probably a little bit of a reach there based on what he's given you, but he's at least contributing positively on the football field. Amari Rodgers, he traded up and he's not on the team anymore. Sean Ryan, I mean, but that's here's the thing. What are the PEDs doing for him? He's barely getting active on game days. I mean, I don't know. It is what it is. Should we move on to the injury report and move on to talking about this game?
Let's move on. So, injury report. So now that we've made it to Friday, it's a lot shorter than it was yesterday.
Yes. It's a lot shorter for both teams, but especially for the Packers. Romeo Doubs is going to be out. It's kind of expected. Devondre Campbell is going to be doubtful for this game, but he did finally participated in a practice.
Yeah, limited practice today, I think, and it was the first one he's participated
since that Bills game
injury. I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then David Bakhtiari, questionable. I think he's just always going to be questionable. It just is what it is.
Yep.
And then Shamar John-Charles, also questionable. Looks like he's finally on the mend, which is really good to see because he's missed a lot of time now. And then on the Eagles side, they don't have anyone on the injury report. So pretty clean game, I'd say, both ways.
It was looking like there was going to be something because they had some people added on Thursday with A.J. Brown with an illness and Devontae Smith with a knee, but then they both got were full participants, I think, on Friday and no designation.
Yeah, and the main thing to remember for the Eagles is that Dallas Goedert is on IR. And Avonte Maddox is also on IR. So their borderline star tight end, and then one of their secondary members are both on IR. So they are missing some players,
and Jordan Davis.
Yes.
Their first round pick is also still on IR.
Yes, their first round D tackle also on IR. Good catch. But those are the injuries so far.
I want to say one more thing about the injuries, just to add. Rodgers was a full participant yesterday, and I don't know what it was today. And he has actually had, since the thumb injury in the last, 5 weeks, he has had very few. I would look back at some of our other pregame podcasts and injury report. He has not had very many full participant practice. It's mostly been limited or DNPs.
Yes, and
so
actually
maybe it's getting better finally.
Something that we actually didn't talk about, which we might as well talk about here in the injury report, is we finally have confirmation on what Rodgers' injury is. He does, in fact, have a broken thumb. We had been kind of speculating at this for some time in the podcast, along with everybody else, that his thumb was broken and was a big part of why he hadn't been performing up to the standard he had set the last few years. And, I mean, I think some people were like, oh, he's just getting old and declining. I'm like, is he going to fall off a MVP cliff that fast? I mean, that seems a bit unrealistic. But, yes, he did confirm to media that he does have a broken thumb. He surgery, he said, was never something that he considered and is not something he's really considering in the offseason either. Matt LaFleur also said that it wasn't something that they considered was necessary for his thumb, and that Rodgers said he's played through worse injuries. He felt like, I think what he said was the knee injury he had in 2018, he said was worse. He said he played
it was like the tibia fracture. It was a bad one. It was the one that similar to what J.J. Watt had.
And then he said that
half a year.
He said that he had a different finger injury in college to his pointer finger that he said hampered his throwing motion more than this one did. But, I mean, if anytime you have a broken bone in your throwing hand, it's going to affect the way that you play.
Right. He claimed it's not affecting his throw, and I don't think anybody believes that.
Yeah, that's a lie. I mean,
that's just like team speaks. Like, no, we're good. Everything's fine. We're going to, no problems.
And I mean, I appreciate
that's just kind of your basics.
I will say though, I appreciate him not using it as an excuse, because he's missing throws, I think, because I think a lot of the missed throws can be attributed to the thumb injury. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, but he's also just not seeing open players, which that's nothing to do with the thumb.
He sees with his thumb.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with the thumb. I mean, he's definitely been worse this year than last year. I think some of it can certainly be attributed to the thumb, and some of it is just he's not playing as well. And I mean, I think it's a combination of the two, but it is interesting and something to note that we finally do have confirmation on that injury.
Well, the other thing I was going to mention in terms of injury that doesn't affect the roster because he's been on IR is Caleb Jones.
Yes, and not on IR. He's been on the NFI list.
Right, so not right. NFI illness.
Yes.
That he's starting to work out now after whatever it was, like a month or 6 weeks out with illness. And this is the first time we've heard what it was, that he's had mono.
Yes.
But he must be getting a little better now that he's starting to work out again.
And he had a really nice preseason for the Packers. And
they've got him onto the full roster because he was playing so well, they were afraid somebody would poach him off of their practice squad.
Yeah, and he's a big guy, and it was a little concerning that he had been on the NFI list this long, but we do finally know that he did have mono, and it's good to see him getting back to practicing, getting activated off that list.
Yeah, he was doing some of the O-line drills I saw in one of the videos from practice this week.
Nice, always good to see.
Some of the blocking drills with Key, Jenkins, Bakhtiari, and I don't remember who the fourth person was that we caught on film doing some blocking drills.
Yeah. Should we move on to our official game preview now, since we've
Let's
kind of
get
tackled
into
the
the
injury
preview
report?
portion? Yep.
Yes. Let's start with our blast from the past. Every single week for these pre-games, we like to talk about the last time these two teams met. Dad, when was the last time we played the Eagles? It's 2020,
So the last time was in December 2020. Packers beat the Eagles 30-16. This was, I guess, Hurts's rookie year. So it was first year of the pandemic, empty stadium, and the Eagles had both Wentz and Hurts play in that game.
Yes,
and neither one was good.
Wentz played the first half and was really bad and took a lot of sacks. And then I think this was pretty much the official start of Jalen Hurts's career as a starter. They put him in the second half.
And I think did he finish the year then?
I believe he took over from that point on because they were like, we're just not. It's not working with Wentz right now.
That. But they were both bad. I mean, the QBR for both Wentz and Hurts were in the 20s.
I mean, yes, but I will say, off the top of my head, I remember they were moving the ball a lot better with Hurts in there, and then he threw, I think, a couple picks that kind of tanked his QBR. Savage had a really nice pick in that game.
And then the Packers offense, as it was most of that season, rolled pretty well. Rodgers threw for 3 TDs. Adams had 121 yards and 2 TDs. Jones ran for 130 yards in a rushing TD.
Well, Jones had that monster 70-yard run. Do you remember the one where Bakhtiari's running alongside him? This was before Bakhtiari's injury.
Was running the whole way down. It's like, now I look back at that, it's like, Bakhtiari, why didn't you just stay back at the line of scrimmage on that play?
I mean,
maybe he stressed his ACL running so far at top speed.
I mean, but I do remember that was a really fun play. I mean, what was it? Jones broke like 5 tackles on that play just to get down there.
It was the Bakhtiari running downfield play.
It was the Bakhtiari running downfield play. It was a really fun play.
And that was right after the Packers had come out to a pretty good lead, and then they let the Eagles get kind of within a score with Jalen Reagor's 73-yard punt return touchdown. That cut it to 7 in the fourth quarter.
The more things change, the more they stay the same, huh?
Yeah, and then Jones ran off the long run to ice it. But yeah,
Yeah. But they did get the win in that game. That's kind of our blast from the past. A lot has changed for both of these teams, Dad. Should we talk about what's been going on in Eagles world this year?
yeah, things have been pretty rosy in Eagles world.
Yeah, I
this
was
year,
say
most of the
all
season.
sunshine and rainbows over in Philly.
Yep, it's always sunny in Philadelphia in 2022.
I mean, they have the best record in the NFL, 9-1, top seed in the NFC. Hurts has had a really nice year, best QBR of his career at a 106.5 versus like an 87.3 that he had in 2021.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
the rating, not the QBR. I forgot what the QBR numbers was.
Oh,
Similar
passer
jump.
rating. Thank you.
Passer rating has gone up. Well, yeah, but QBR has done the same thing where it's gone up 20 points but a big jump from any of his previous years.
He's throwing for more yards a game than he had. He's throwing for 240 a game as opposed to 210 last year. He's got 15 touchdowns and 3 picks. Great touchdown to interception ratio. They
lot
have
better
struggled.
than what it was before. His best before last year was 16 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. So he's gotten much more efficient with the ball.
And those are
than he was in
passing
the past.
touchdowns, right?
Yes, not the rushing touchdowns, right?
But they have struggled a bit the last 2 games, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, both of them. You know, they got their first loss of the year 2 weeks ago to the Washington football team Commanders, and just squeaked out a 1-point win against the mostly not good Colts.
Yeah, I mean, the Jeff Saturday-led Colts, I mean, like we said, Jalen Hurts has been throwing for 240 a game, but in the last 2 weeks, he threw for $175, 175 yards versus Washington, and only threw for 190 yards against Indianapolis. So definitely a bit of a downturn in those passing statistics these last 2 weeks. And, you know, hopefully something maybe the Packers can take advantage of this slight downturn after
Hopefully
he had a mostly very strong year.
Still on that downward trend, let's hope.
Let's hope.
They've also added a couple players recently because they've been kind of weak against the run.
Yes, which we'll get into.
So they've added Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph in the last week and a half to try to beef up their defensive front against the run, after also adding Robert Quinn earlier in the year to try to improve the pass rush. So they've been looking to
very
add
active
pieces to their team during the season.
Yeah, and I think that Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph additions are definitely something that'll help them a lot, especially with how much time Jordan Davis has missed being on IR. I mean, they're definitely old. But they can still play. And Ndamukong Suh, did you see his comments this week?
Yes, you read his comments and I guess there's no chance of the Packers ever adding him to beef up their defensive front.
Let's just say he doesn't like the Packers. Let's just say that. Or Aaron Rodgers.
Neither the Packers nor Aaron Rodgers.
Yep, it is what it is. He played in Detroit for a long time. I don't think Packers fans particularly like Ndamukong Suh either.
Yes, I believe that feeling is mutual.
Mutual, yes. Anywho, should we get on to the meat and potatoes?
Yeah, let's get into our thoughts of the team and what makes
or the turkey and mashed potatoes for our Thanksgiving. Yes. And hopefully
run stuffing by the Packers on the Eagles.
I was going to say, hopefully we can stuff the run. So let's get on to our general thoughts on the game. We like to break these down into a few parts. And that first part is what makes the Eagles a tough matchup. Mind if I start?
Sure, go ahead.
So to me, I think what makes the Eagles a tough matchup, I mean, it's always a laundry list of items when you're playing one of the best teams in the league, if not the best team in the league. I just think that, personally, I think they have the most well-rounded roster in the league. They have the second-ranked rushing offense by DVOA. They have the sixth-ranked passing offense by DVOA. And they have the third-ranked passing defense by DVOA. It's really well-rounded. The only thing they struggle with is rushing defense, which we'll talk about a bit later when we talk about their weaknesses. But just looking at how well-rounded they are, they have an excellent O-line. PFF has them graded as the second-best pass-blocking unit and the seventh-best run-blocking unit, with players like Jason Kelce, who I would argue is the best center in the league. Jordan Mailata is a really good left tackle, and he's also enormous. Landon Dickerson, who was like the 37th overall pick and probably would have been a much higher pick if this was 2 years ago, if he hadn't come into that draft with an injury. And then Lane Johnson, who's one of the better right tackles over the last few years. I mean, all of them are either highly drafted or well-decorated players. They have a dual-threat quarterback in Jalen Hurts that we talked about. He's averaging 240 passing yards a game and 44 rushing yards a game. They have a really solid secondary, anchored by the best corner duo in the league, arguably, with Darius Slay and James Bradbury both ranking in the top 20 amongst corners in coverage grade per PFF. And they have a really good wide receiver room, led by A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. A.J. Brown, obviously a star, and I would say borderline superstar in this league. And then Devontae Smith, Heisman Award-winning second-year wide receiver out of Alabama. I mean, and this isn't even counting the fact that they're missing Dallas Goedert, their star tight end. I mean, they just have a really, really well-built roster, and then they have solid edge rushers. Interior D-line's been a little weak with Fletcher Cox getting a little older and Jordan Davis missing so much time. Javon Hargrave rushes the passer really well, though.
The top three edges have been doing well this year, at least by PFF.
Yeah, I mean, just a really, really good team and a really well-constructed roster and a team that knows who they are and how they win games. I just think it's a tough matchup because they're good. That's what I got. What do you think makes them a tough matchup?
So a couple of things are kind of similar, that they're well-rounded both sides of the ball. And some traditional numbers, they're fourth in league in scoring, fifth in yards per game, and seventh in scoring defense, and second in defensive yards per game. So everybody talked about how tough the Titans were as a matchup because of Derrick Henry, but the Eagles are a better running team than the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
They're sixth in the league in yards per game, and they have both a running quarterback and a good running back, which
I mean, and
nobody's going to confuse Tannehill with a good running quarterback.
I mean, it's almost as though they don't quite have like a star running back. They kind of split carries between Sanders, Gainwell, and Boston Scott, but I think collectively they make up a really, really solid running room.
Yeah. And in contrast to that, they're also really good passing the ball.
Yeah.
The Titans were third to last in yards per game, and
they still
Eagles
threw for 330 on us. Isn't that something?
Right. So imagine a team that's twice as good, or the 12th in the league. So not near the top end. And then they have, as you mentioned, two top end wide receivers. You mentioned some of the DVOA numbers. They're also their D line. They're fifth in sack rate. So their D-line is overall grading fairly well, even though they're not so good against the run because of how well they're doing in sack rate on defense. They also, just to mention some other things, per ESPN, their pass rush win rate is second overall in the league per ESPN, and their pass block win rate is 10th. So they're good at that as well.
Yeah, I mean,
and their top two receivers. I don't know if you mentioned Brown is 11th overall by PFF in the league, and Devonta Smith is 6th overall by PFF.
Per PFF, just total
PFF
wide receiver grades.
Yeah, wide receiver grades.
I mean, just
PFF with among players have had enough snaps.
Yes, of course. I mean, here's the thing: it's like there's a reason they're 9-1. Like, there's a reason they've only lost one game. I know they've been a little bit unsteady the last 2 weeks, like a loss to Washington and then a really close game against the Colts that they kind of had to squeak out at the end. They're a good football team, and I think they have a lot of different ways that they can exploit the Packers, which brings us to our second point of how they match up against the Packers and what advantages they have against the Packers specifically.
Yes, there's a list here.
Yeah, do you want to go start us off?
So, the obvious is expect the Eagles to run the ball a lot with Sanders and Hurts on designed runs. He's Hurts is 10th for amongst running by a QB by PFF, so specifically for running. And the Green Bay defensive line, according to DVOA, Football Outsiders, has now fallen to last place. I think we had a few weeks where they were like third to last, fifth to last. They're now last, despite grading out as 17th in sack rate, which is pretty good. So that's actually pulling their overall grade up. So the run defense is low enough to drag the overall grade down to last.
So was that D-line DVOA by just total DVOA or pass or rush or just total?
It's total DVOA for the
D-line.
So including both the rushing grades, which includes several different rushing metrics, stuff rate, power rate, a couple different things about how well you do in short yardage, how well you do in never getting negative or no gain plays, and so Green Bay's last on D.
Yeah. Moral of the story: there's a mismatch there. The trenches are going to be really tough for the Packers defense in this
Philadelphia,
game.
the Eagles' run block win rate that I didn't mention before is fifth overall by ESPN.
Yeah.
Compared to, if you want another metric for Green Bay's D line, it doesn't matter which
metric you use. They're bad.
The metric is they're 29th in run stop win rate by ESPN.
There are only 32 teams, in case you didn't know.
And the Eagles' pass rush win rate is second overall. So I think this is going to be strength versus strength, actually.
The Packers' O-line is actually kind of rounded into form.
And we can talk about that. We'll talk about a little bit of the Packers' strengths, but I have more notes there. But they've been doing really well lately. But their edges are having good years, as we mentioned. Sort of their top three in terms of snaps are all grading out very well by PFF. Drawing a blank on the names at the moment. And on offense, the Eagles' pass block win rate is also pretty good. They're 10th. And though Green Bay has a pass rush win rate of 6th, I think a lot of that is still being carried by the numbers that Gary was putting on before he was lost for the year. Though Preston has stepped up. He's moved up now into 10th among all edges in ESPN's pass rush win rate. So he's helping out there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Preston's had a pretty solid year. Did you have any other things on Eagles trying to exploit, or?
I have one more thing that I think, or at least what makes them, maybe this should have gone, what makes them a tough matchup is their defensive secondary, as you mentioned, has been kind of the strength, and especially in the deep middle, whereby Football Outsiders, they are way better than any other team in the league at defending the deep middle.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a really well-rounded team. For me, I think the two big things are that the Packers don't particularly tackle well, and the Eagles have a lot of good options after the catch. A.J. Brown, for instance, ranks 15th in the NFL in yards after catch per NBC Sports. I know Goddard won't be playing today, but he is 6th in the NFL in yards after catch, and I think I only include that just to illustrate that they put their players in good positions to get the ball in space and move without the ball. I mean, Quez Watkins, their third receiver, averages like 4.7 yards after catch per reception, that is, off the top of my head, I believe, per Pro Football Reference. I believe I read that earlier. And the Packers are really bad at tackling. I think they've actually improved the last 2 weeks. They were down around in like the mid-20s, I believe, and now they're at like 15, 16, right about average. But
they just got off to such a bad start at that this year.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I don't think I trust most of the team to tackle A.J. Brown in space. I hate to say it, but I just think that that's a colossal mismatch for the team, and just showing that the Eagles are really good at getting their guys in space and moving without the ball. And then my other was that the Packers under Joe Barry have historically, despite being a zone team, really struggled against running quarterbacks. And here's some examples. I mean, Josh Allen this year ran for 49 yards. Daniel Jones this year ran for 37 yards. Taylor Heineke last year, 95 yards on the ground. Tyler Huntley last year, 73 yards on the ground. Justin Fields last year, 74 yards on the ground. Justin Fields last year, 43 yards on the ground. I mean, the only times I would say that they've... Sorry, go ahead.
But the times like our opponent can't pass, like they Washington and Chicago, but they're getting free first downs.
Yeah.
The quarterback scrambling.
Just no contain at all. And we'll talk about that later. But the only times I'd say they've performed well against a quarterback who is considered a running threat were Kyler Murray last year when they held him to 21 yards on 6 carries. Justin Fields this year when they held him to 20 yards on 8 carries, although this was before they started doing more designed runs as part of their offensive scheme, for the Bears, that is. And then Ryan Tannehill last week where they didn't really let him scramble at all. But also, you don't really have to scramble when you're throwing for 330 yards. So I would say they've only really had 2 successful holds on quarterbacks who can really run the ball. I am very nervous for what Jalen Hurts and the Eagles have in store in terms of running packages. And I think that that should be focus number 1 for the Packers defense, is not letting him kill you with his legs. Because if he's killing with his legs and his arm, you got no chance. You gotta at least make him beat you with his arm. And I mean, it's still not a great option because he's having a really nice year throwing the ball too. But you can't let him kill you both ways. Like you just can't let him do it.
In the last 2 weeks, he is they have not been throwing the ball. They've been sputtering a little bit on offense.
Yes.
So I'd like to see them force that a little bit more.
And it's interesting. Also, the last 2 weeks without Goddard, they've been struggling throwing the ball. Has been the biggest change, is they have not had Goddard.
And I'd like to see, can they do, if it's like last week, even though they gave up a bazillion passing yards to Tannehill, they held up pretty well in run defense against Derrick Henry.
Yes.
One of their best, I would say, considering the circumstances, run defense performances of the year.
I 100% agree. One of my big notes after the game was, look, I wanted you to stop Derrick Henry. You stopped Derrick Henry. Like, I never would have guessed Ryan Tannehill would throw it on you like that, but it is what it is, I suppose, when you're given all those extra resources to the box. But anyway, the Packers aren't entirely hopeless. They're definitely the underdogs in this game. It's in Philly, like we said, but there are definitely some ways I think that they could go about exploiting the Eagles. And I think for me, the first one is running the ball. We talked about earlier, the Eagles have really high ranks in pass defense by DVOA, but they only rank 26th in run defense by DVOA. And this is part of the reason that they added Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph. So they were really having trouble getting gashed up the middle with Jordan Davis out. They're allowing 122 yards per game on the ground per team rankings, which is 19th in the NFL. It's below average. Versus the Colts, even with Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph in, they allowed 99 yards on the ground. They did limit Jonathan Taylor's average pretty well, but he did carve them up a bit in the first half. And then, I mean, their run defense definitely improved with Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph there, but it's still, I think, the place you need to start when you're talking about attacking this team is running the ball. And then I think the other thing is getting the ball to players in space. Specifically, I think it's gonna have to be Aaron Jones, because the Eagles, despite being a good defense, per PFF have the 29th graded tackling defense on the year. That's
very interesting. It's not something I was aware of or would have guessed.
Yeah, I know, and I was actually also pretty shocked. But yeah, when you go to defense, 22 regular season, they're 29th. Right, just ahead of the Browns, the Raiders, and the Jaguars. I mean, and PFF grades, obviously not perfect, not a perfect metric, but it's something that's just another data point. And I think if you're attacking this team, I would love to see a lot of screens. I would love to see it. I know it's not always the best part of it's not always super efficient to run wide receiver screens, but I would love to see some screens to Aaron Jones. I feel like they have not used the screen game much at all this year. Not entirely sure why that is, but I would love to see them get the ball out in space, and I think that in the running game would be the two biggest ways that they can go about at least trying to get an edge against the Eagles. What are you feeling about on that?
So I have some of those same things about the Philadelphia Eagles D-line rating is poor against the run in a number of ways. So I think it's game to try to get the run game to work. I think the Green Bay offensive line is really coming together, especially in pass blocking. Bakhtiari is first overall now in pass block win rate in the league, and Nyman is sixth among tackles, that is.
Yes, the tackles are playing well, but the interior had a really down game against the Titans, and they're going to need to bounce back this game.
But for the season, pass block win rate, Myers is fifth at center. He's actually doing okay. Now, he doesn't show up in the run block win rate.
I pretend I do not see.
So this would be something, and I have it as kind of a matchup, but to look at how the pass blocking holds up overall. But I think the tackles have been doing pretty well. And the edge is where I think their best pass rush winning is coming from, as opposed to against the Titans. Their best pass rush, well, part of it was just how good they were at the middle with Simmons.
I will say, despite grades, I am concerned about Myers and Runyon against Fletcher Cox
I have that as
and
a
Hargrave.
To watch,
I'm very concerned.
How he holds up against their interior, Cox and Sue and Joseph rotating in.
And Hargrave. Don't forget Hargrave. Hargrave's a good player.
But I think another thing I want to say that kind of is similar to some of the things you said earlier is, although they're amazing at coverage in general, the Eagles are, and elite and covering a team's top two receivers. They're number two in the league against number one receivers, and lead the league in covering number two receivers. But other receivers, tight ends, and running backs as pass catchers, they're kind of ordinary. So I think this might be a place, as you mentioned, to use the running backs in screen game to throw passes to running backs and tight ends to try to find space to gain some yards. Mm-hmm. And then also on the defensive side, without Goddard, the Eagles' tight ends are very ordinary.
Yes, it's Stoll, I believe, is Jack Stoll? Is their number one now?
It would be more accurate to say below average.
Yeah.
So this may actually free up the linebackers to be able to help out more in the run game.
Boy, do I wish we had Campbell for this game. I mean,
yeah.
At least we're gonna have Quay. It sounds like, even though he left last game.
So that's been nice. Yeah. It was one thing we didn't mention about in the injury report. We had 3 injuries during the last game. Savage, Quay, and Slayton all had to leave the game at one point. And Quay was a full participant, I think, all week, and has no designation. Savage never had an injury designation all week, and neither did Slayton. So we actually kind of escaped the last game pretty well in terms of injuries.
Yeah, and that's at least some kind of silver lining to that game. And the fact that they had an extra long week to recover did not hurt.
Yes, they get the mini bye. They've been desperate for some kind of a break.
Goodness, I can't believe the bye is this late this year. I mean, it's week 14, right?
Yeah, bye? I think that's right. Week 14. We still got a couple more weeks before the bye.
I'm counting the bye as a win this year. We're moving that one into the win column. I think that's kind of what we have for the Packers being able to exploit the Eagles. Should we talk a bit about what we want to see from the Packers in this game?
Sure. You want to go first, or
you go ahead first?
So, as you mentioned, I want to see the Packers running the ball.
Yep, definitely.
Until the Eagles prove that their changes have improved the run defense. But especially I want to see them run to the left side, where their D-line grades by Football Outsiders is bottom 3. It's interesting that wide right, for some reason, they are much better. But wide left and behind the left tackle, and a little less so behind the center, the Eagles' run defense is weakest. So that's what I'd like to see them looking to those spots. And then, as we talked about how good the Eagles' pass coverage grades are overall, short, middle, and to the right are where they are got less elite. And so it may be where that they could be looking to throw those screen passes to the running backs and tight ends if they want to work that part of those parts of the field.
Yeah,
with some screen passes to the middle and perhaps some shots to the right side.
I would love to see Christian Watson continue his ratio of ridiculous amount of touchdowns.
What I'd like to see Christian Watson sprint for 4 touchdowns.
Yes, I mean, why not? Since we're out here hoping. I think the things that I want to see is limit Jalen Hurts' scrambling. I think Enagbare and Preston, it's going to be really important, and Garvin and Hollins if he plays, of course, at edge. I would really love to see them stay in their rush lanes, the D-line as well. You can't let Hurts break the pocket on you. I think disciplined pass rush is going to be really important in this game because he can really kill you with his legs. And a rushing quarterback, I mean, I think I read somewhere that the EPA on scrambles is way higher. That's the expected points added per play. On scrambles is way higher than the expected points added per play from just a regular drop back. Just something to keep in mind. Just don't let him scramble. Make the Eagles throw. I saw, like we said, they've kind of struggled to throw the ball the past 2 games versus Washington and Indianapolis. I was just looking. So in the drive that the Eagles took down the field to take the lead on the Colts, they were down 16-10, late in the 4th, 3:17 left to go. And they called 3 passing plays and got a pass interference. And then they called 8 straight running plays and scored the go-ahead touchdown to win the game. And I think 3 of those were Jalen Hurts runs. Something that Benjamin Solak of The Ringer, who is an Eagles fan as well, does a lot of work for the Eagles, does a lot of good work for The Ringer, was saying was Jalen Hurts has thrown the ball well this year, but when you look at that drive in crunch time, the Eagles were calling plays like they didn't trust Jalen Hurts to throw the ball because they're down 6. And some people were saying, oh, they were just killing time. I mean, you don't kill time down 6. You don't run it 8 straight times down 6 if you think you're going to be able to pass it on Indianapolis. And so it seems that he was saying that the Eagles didn't trust their passing offense to really move the ball when they really needed to situationally at the end of that game when it was essential. And that was what he was saying as someone who's like pretty tuned into the Eagles. And I found that very interesting because, like we said, Hurts has had a much better year passing the ball than he has in the past. I think he's definitely in the MVP candidate conversation. They're 9-1 for a reason. And on the thing is, with all of that said, he's struggled to throw the ball the last 2 weeks without Goddard there.
Yeah, and one thing I just wanted to look up about Goddard. So he's the number 5 graded tight end by PFF in the league.
He's been insane. He was averaging, I think, like 8.8 yards after catch on the year. Like, he was a really important weapon for this offense, and I think it's been underplayed how much they're missing with him out.
Yeah. One thing I was trying to check on is whether, his pass blocking and run blocking are kind of right in the midline average. So I was wondering if they were also suffering from losing him as a blocker as well as a receiver, though it seems to be more his receiving ability that's having the impact right now, based on what he's grading out well at.
Yeah, and I mean, I just looked it up. He was averaging 8.4 yards after catch per reception, which I think was on pace to be like the 3rd most all time for a tight end or something like that. Something absurd. And I think they just need to make they need to make the Eagles throw. The Eagles can throw, but they're much more dangerous when they're running the ball, in my opinion, and when Jalen Hurts is really threatening you with his legs. They've struggled to throw it the last 2 weeks, and those teams have played them really close. So let's see if the Packers can do that as well. Going beyond that, I would love to see us tackle, for the love of God. A.J. Brown and Hurts will punish you if you don't wrap up, especially A.J. Brown. And then I would love to see them stick with the run. If they get behind in a negative game script, I think it's going to be really tough. Keep it close. Make it an ugly game.
Yes.
Make it just drag them into the mud and see if you can beat them
first, and then lean on the run game.
Yeah, I mean, I think they need to make this game as ugly as they can, and just hope for the best. See if they can get the Philly crowd to boo their home team. Do a little psychological warfare there, maybe.
What are the odds on that? That at some point the Philly fans will boo their home team.
But yeah, and then the other thing I want to see is I want to see them stick with the run, like I said. And those are the main things I want to see from the Packers. Moving on, what players are you looking at this game, or matchups?
So as I mentioned before, I'm going to be looking at Myers at center. How well does he hold up against the Philadelphia interior?
We need a bounce-back game from him and Runyon.
Because Runyon had a kind of a rough game last game, too. So the interior offensive line, how well will they hold up and be able to create rushing lanes?
Yeah, I mean, they couldn't run the ball at all versus Tennessee because the interior just melted like cardboard every single time they tried to run.
That's where Tennessee's run defense was.
I was going to say, the game plan was bad.
Part of the running defense, and they kept trying to run up the middle.
Yes,
and so
they were just running into a brick wall with their head down 4 or 5 times every drive.
So one thing, the teams that seem to have had like the magic formula against the Packers the last few years are really strong running game and a really strong run defense.
Yep.
The Eagles only have one of those two. The Titans had both, and the teams we've struggled with the last few years have had both.
I would say they struggle. I think you can take the strong running game out of it. They struggle when the Packers can't run the ball. They really struggle. They really struggle when they can't run the ball, and they have ever since LaFleur's been here. Yeah. I mean, they've struggled to score if they can't run the football.
It just changes the whole structure. It does something to the whole offense where it just kind of falls apart.
It's wild. But yeah, that's definitely something to keep an eye on is Myers specifically and Runyon as well. And then I saw you had Clark down here as well.
Yeah, I'm looking for Kenny Clark to have a bounce back game and have more impact. He's had kind of a down year.
Five straight weeks of, I would say, average to slightly below average play. I mean, he hasn't been atrocious out there, but
so I'll be watching him to see if he can make more impact plays.
Yeah, I mean, they need him to because he was almost a non-factor against a backup center last week, like we said on the post-game pod. I mean,
Yep.
it's been a really rough go of it for him. For me, the players I'm watching are Enigbare and Preston Smith, that is. I just need them to not overcommit on their rushing lanes and please keep contained in the pocket, because...
And I feel like they did a pretty good job of that last week. Setting the edge against the run.
Yeah, and I think, well, more so just not collapsing too hard on a...
Diving into center and
stay in your rush lanes when you're...
scramble the outside.
Exactly. Stay in your rush lanes when you're rushing the passer.
You've got to maintain rush lane discipline so you don't open up escape routes.
And the other thing I'm watching is I want to see how Quay Walker is deployed. I wonder how much they're going to use him as a spy. I would like to see that at least a little bit, just because Jalen Hurts as a runner is so dangerous. Yeah, I think those are the two players I'm watching the most.
Something they would do where they have both Barnes, because I'm assuming that Campbell's not going to be ready yet. So that when Barnes and Quay are both out there, do they have Quay Walker operate as a spy?
Exactly. And I think the other, with a scrambling quarterback, I just am so worried about third downs. I mean, they were so bad on third downs last week that it was almost a borderline statistical anomaly to be that bad on third downs. I know they ended 7 of 13, but it started 7 of 10.
And a lot of those were long. A lot of like 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 7s. So they were
Please be better on third downs this game, for the love of God.
When you force the 3rd and long, please convert with the stop.
And it's the complete antithesis of what they were in the beginning of the year. The beginning of the year, they were one of the best third down defenses in the league. And then all of a sudden...
them.
Exactly. They just never forced them. But then all of a sudden they're actually forcing some third downs, and they just can't buy a stop last week at least. And I would love to see a bounce back game from the secondary while we're on that topic. I thought the secondary was really, 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 really bad last week.
They had reverted to early season like Vikings game where players run uncovered.
I thought it was some of the worst, like, as a unit the secondary has played probably the worst game I think the secondary has played as a unit all year, to allow like the third to last ranked passing defense throw it all over you. And they need a bounce back game. They need to win right now. Like we said, the Packers have their backs against the wall. They are 4-7, and they need to win 6 straight to even. They need to win 6 straight and get help to make the playoffs at this point. Yep. It's not impossible.
Get them to 10-7, which usually, but not guaranteed, makes it in.
Yes, but shall we get to our score predictions? Wrap this thing up. Sure. You want to go first?
So, I do not have. Maybe some people will say these are Green Bay rose-colored glasses that I have on.
Yeah,
but I have the Eagles winning 30-17.
30-17. What? How'd you land there?
So you were those like what are you on that you're having the Packers score 17 points?
How did you land there? I mean, I
don't expect a particularly high-paced game. I think the Packers will be able to get a couple of drives, 1 or 2 shot plays. So that's basically just 3 scoring drives out of whatever they get, 10.
Yeah, I was curious because I was just pulling this up for my own edification. The Eagles are only 6.5-point favorites at home. Feels kind of low, right? I have my score prediction is Philly 27, Green Bay 10.
That's not that different from mine.
No, it's not. I wanted you to fill time while I looked up what the spread was, if we're being honest.
So yeah, it is kind of. I guess people are giving a lot of credence to the fact that the Packers are essentially a cornered rat right now, and you don't want to mess with one.
I mean, maybe
they've got no way out.
Maybe Vegas has given them a little bump because they've had a little extra prep time.
That's true.
And Philly's looked a little off the last 2 weeks. Could be that. I'd be a little surprised. 6.5 is still kind of surprising. I would have thought it would be closer to 8, especially at home. But those are our score predictions: 27-10 for me, 30-17 for you. Run the table. Let's go. We haven't gotten the iconic Rodgers quote yet.
No, the closest thing we got was "We're not dead yet." That was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was when we beat the Cowboys and everything was nice and rosy. I'm sure Cowboys fans are rooting for us this week though. But anywho, That's our pregame coverage for the Packers-Eagles game, coming to you on Sunday night football in primetime in Philly, city of brotherly love. Can the Packers pull off the upset 6.5 dogs on the road?
City of brotherly love and booing.
Yes. Hopefully the Packers can pull off this upset. I mean, it's tough because if they lose this one, I think, as Rasul Douglas said, it's time to start planning your vacations for the holidays. Until next time, though, we will be doing a post-game pod on Monday, if you want to come give it a listen after the game, with all of our notes about how the Packers played, how the Packers hopefully pulled off the win. Fingers crossed, knock on wood. So come check that out. And if you liked what you heard today, come check us out on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. We post new episode updates. We post articles that we find interesting, Packers injury reports, any Packers news topics. Post all of that on our Twitter, so come give us a follow. We'd really appreciate it. And if you like what you heard even more than that, come subscribe to us on YouTube at Father Son Packers Podcast. It would really help our numbers out, and we'd really appreciate it. But until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.